I had so many awakenings in Kuala Lumpur. I mean, the first 3 years, we went over there knowing that I would probably not be able to get a job. If you were attempting to stay here in 2008, you're just trying to survive because it was really, I mean, the market crashed in a huge, huge way and it impacted everybody. So I was like, so my taste buds are officially better than your taste buds. And he was like, all right, you won fair and square. Don't know how that happened.
Richie, mate.
He'll admit it. He'll admit it.
Welcome back to the Chef JKP podcast. And on the show today, we have the honor of having Michele Johnson, co-founder and managing partner of the one and only Pitfire Pizza. Michele, welcome to the show.
Thank you, James. Glad to be here.
First thing, favorite or first childhood food memories?
Okay. I'm going to go with one that's like a little bit obscure. It's literally, but it's changed my life. So when I was around 6 years old, I was in bed like with a stomach bug, like 6-year-olds get. And I was starting to feel a little bit better. I could hear my mom in the kitchen talking with a friend of hers. She clearly had someone over. And so I was starting to feel better. I came sort of wandering out, my eyes in my pajamas, and she was like, oh, hi, honey, are you feeling better? And I said, and then I had smelled and I could see a bowl of cucumber salad sitting on the table. And that was one of my favorite. I love cucumber salad. I can smell a cucumber like from a mile away. And so she was like, she saw me looking at it. She said, would you like some? And I said, yeah. And so she made me a little bowl and I ate it. And it just made me feel better. And
Wow.
It made me feel better. And since then, I'm addicted to cucumber salad. It's something that I make all the time. I make it exactly the way that she used to.
So how does she make it then?
She came from Germany when she was a kid. So she kind of makes a bit of a German version of it. So she cuts the sort of stem end off the cucumber, and then she rubs it, me and my sister both still do this, right? She rubs it and she says that gets out the bitterness. Not sure that it does, but anyway, I still do it just because I feel like someone up there. My mom's still around, and if some German grandma is going to haunt me or something about it. So then I do that. Then I cut off that strip, and then she used to peel them and cut them kind of thick and make them. And I tend to like the smaller, crispy ones that you get here. Yeah. And I leave the skins on, and I like them thin. So I just do them on a mandolin. Uh-huh. And then it's some vinegar, some water, like wine vinegar, or like rice vinegar.
Rice wine vinegar, yeah.
Some water, some salt, some pepper, and then some like sweet onions that you just slice in, but you got to let those sit in the vinegar, and that's it.
Sounds nice.
It's very nice.
Wow.
It's really yummy.
That's the first we've had a cucumber salad in here. So that's quite cool.
She said when I was a baby, the only thing that would shut me up was a dill pickle.
Ah.
She would give me a dill pickle. So I don't know. It's something about me and cucumbers.
Wow. Love that. So for anyone who doesn't know you, which part of the world are you from?
So I grew up in Alabama. I was in a military family. So I was born in New York City, and we lived in various different places in Tennessee, et cetera, and kind of settled in Alabama on an army base there called Fort Rucker. And we lived in the military housing there. And then my mom and my stepdad at the time, they split up. And then we stayed in that area. So I've been, all of my formative years are in, small town Alabama.
So then explain to me what was the food scene back then in Alabama when you were growing up?
Just whatever your mom made. And, I remember when Pizza Hut first came to town, it was a big deal for us and a big treat because it was like the first, of its kind. And it was like, it was a big deal, and going there as a treat. I remember Dairy Queen being, a treat, but not much. There was more like in rural Alabama, you find that there's really good produce that comes out of Alabama. In fact, I spent many years living on a farm where it was a working farm. I'll tell you all about that if you want to know. Yeah. And it's just more like home cooking kind of stuff, just home cooking. You could go to these places and they'd be like a cafeteria style place. There was one seafood place in a small town called McLean's. It's still there. They're serving the same thing that they used to serve, fried oysters, po' boys, fried fish, fried catfish. Catfish is a big thing. So that was kind of the food scene. The food scene was homemade.
So quite hearty as well?
Yeah, hearty, healthy.
Yeah, exactly. So then as you were growing up throughout your teenage years, what were the types of food that you were leaning towards? Were you a fussy eater or did you love everything?
I loved everything. I always have. And I was as a kid, I was like always hungry. And I was always like in the kitchen looking for some snack or something. And, skinny as a rail, but like just always hungry and always curious, and always wanted to taste things. Like if there was ever anything new, I wanted to try it. I wanted to taste it. So it's always my mom's home cooking, and it's really basic stuff. Like she cooked in the early years a lot of German cuisine, and I love it. She makes this thing called rouladen. It's a beautiful, like you take a steak, you pound it out, you put inside some Dijon mustard, German mustard, some onions, some carrots, and some dill pickle, and then you roll it up. And a piece of like ham.
Okay.
Piece of really
and it's fried
ham.
Or just eaten as is?
Well, you brown it and then you braise it, and then you have the gravy with red sauerkraut.
But where do you think your curiosity of food came from?
Honestly, I don't know. I was born with it. I can say that. Like my memories of like my first childhood food memory is like one of me feeling better having food.
Yeah.
And I think that just
it's very powerful.
Stuck with me. I think I came out of the womb with it, honestly. And my mom was like, just tolerated it, basically.
Wow.
She tolerated it.
So then, throughout your educational time in the US, were you into hospitality at all, or did you go into another path altogether?
Another path altogether. I wanted to be an accountant. My mom is an accountant. My sister has now went through accountancy. So it seemed to me the natural thing. It came naturally to me as well. So, throughout high school, I went to a very, very, very small high school, and we had the basic courses and things. And my most memorable course from that was two of them: typing. I learned how to type on a manual typewriter back when they were teaching typing, and I was like a speed champion. But anyway, and home economics. Home economics, right. And I really sucked at the sewing part of it, but the cooking part of it changed my life. Like, I made this one. I still remember it as the first. If there's ever a food that changed my life as a person, as a home cook, it was this oatmeal bar cookie recipe that I learned, and we made it in class. And it's just this very simple batter that you mix up, and then you put it in, and you bake it, and you get it out, and you lay Hershey chocolate bars on top of it. Wow. Simple, but it was the first time I'd ever followed a recipe and put something together that was just so delicious. And to this day, like my sister's like, you absolutely, I just would make them for whoever wanted them. I would just constantly I came home from school, I have to show you this new thing that I learned. And, so it was that really showed me, oh my gosh, I can actually make something. Before it was just eating stuff that other people made. And that was just like, okay, I can follow a recipe and I can make something.
I'll ask you later when that will be on the menu. Pitfire. So if you didn't go, so accounting, did you do accounting or did you?
I did. I did. And I left high school and I kind of, at the age of leaving high school, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I didn't have
was
any
that 16
real.
or 18?
That was 17, actually. Okay. Yeah. So I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I was kind of had a bit of a wild hair as a kid, and I just wanted to like have fun and party. And I was like waiting to turn 18 so I could like go, legally drink and go into clubs and stuff like that. Um, so I got a scholarship to a 2-year junior college, and I did that in accounting. So I did 2 years in accounting, did well in school, but while I was doing that to kind of support myself and to get some experience, I worked at a tax preparation firm, Barr, Brenson, Wilkerson, and Bowden. I'll never forget it. And
That's ingrained in there.
I was a tax return checker.
Oh my word.
So, I don't know if you've ever seen a U.S. tax return, but like,
I don't know if I want to.
Well, once you get the hang of how it works, it's like it all comes down to the first 2 pages, and then all of that ties back to certain forms. So you just have to check the math on those forms and make sure it's entered correctly on the thing. So I did that for 2 years and just realized there's no way this is for me. Just no way this is for me. And so I got my degree. I took a break. Again, like, now what do I do? And not long after that, I met my husband on a blind date. And we felt like it was like love at first sight. And he was actually a flight school student at Fort Rucker, the Army base, which we lived nearby. And he came there to go to, if you learn how to fly helicopters in the Army, you go to Fort Rucker, Alabama. That's where you learn. And my stepdad was, and he's retired from it, a flight instructor. So my husband, Bill, was going through this school. I met him on a blind date. And my stepdad immediately saw an opportunity to like have some real fun with one of the students, So he found out which class he was in.
Oh my God.
And
poor
then,
Bill.
Yeah, I know. And he sort of like meeting him it changed my life in so many ways. He was the first person I'd ever met and dated that said they wanted to show me other parts of the country. And I never really felt like I belonged in rural Alabama. I always felt like a bit of an outsider. And I was just so enamored by this when he said, I want to show you New Mexico, which is where he grew up, in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And it's a beautiful state. We have a home there now. We're renovating. And so he finished flight school. We dated. He finished flight school and went back to Houston, Texas, to finish his degree in hotel and restaurant management. And he said, do you want to move in together? And I said, yes. And so we went to Houston, and then he was supporting himself, like, through his degree. So I got a job, an admin job, like paying our rent. And he worked nights as a bartender. And he had worked nights as a bartender, as a waiter in some of the restaurants in Houston.
And was studying.
It was a lot. And he did, before he met me, he worked a lot as a waiter in like Papado, which is a really famous, well, they're all over the place now in the States, Papado, Pappasitos. The Pappas family is a Greek family that's just have this empire.
Right.
And their food is amazing. Whatever they do is turns to gold. So he had done that, and he got burned out on the industry doing that. And but the time in Houston was great. I basically we explored the food scene there. I tried stuff I'd never tried before. And it was really good. And then he graduated, and they had this week-long recruiting thing that the students attend, and all these different companies come who recruit from universities. And he had a choice of going to learn how to fly Apache helicopters if he took one path, which was a helicopter he'd always wanted to fly, because it's kind of like, it's a gunship, right? So of course, so he was in the National Guard. So he could have stayed doing that and gotten a different kind of a job. But then there was a company that offered him a job in lighting, and it was a really well-respected company, had been around for ages, and the offer was for a factory sales representative. And we decided together to take that because, he was burnt out on the food industry. He knew he didn't want to go into hotels, the hotel side of things. I mean, degree he got is like a business degree at the end of the day. And this seemed like a good, stable company. It was a good salary. He had to go to the factory for 6 months to train. So it made a lot of sense. And so he did that. I was relieved because I really was hoping he would do that rather than go this flight path thing, because then it would have been more uncertain. I was ready to have some stability in our life.
Right.
And so then he did that, and then they posted him in San Antonio. And when we got to San Antonio, he said, all right, it's time for you now to stop working. You go finish your degree. And so I studied full time for 2 years, and I chose human resources as my focus because they had a phenomenal HR program there. And I learned about the teachers, and I thought, this is kind of something that, I like people. I'm good with people. I liked that there's a technical side of it as well, like with compensation and benefits, and especially compensation. There's a whole science behind comp, from all levels, like salary grades and all that sort of stuff. Benefits are complicated. It's the HR department that negotiates the health insurance plan for companies, and then rolls it out and does the open enrollment every year. And, it's not just recruiting, like a lot of people seem to think it is, and firing people, which definitely there is that side of it. But
which is not easy also.
But yeah, so he stayed in lighting and really loved the job. And I was enjoying my degree program a lot. And I did a couple of internships. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to definitely go this path. And then towards the end, we got transferred to Seattle. And that was wonderful. I mean, for me, it's like literally as far away as I could get from my family, which I was a bit scared about. But he was like, we're going. I've heard so much about the city. And it was a really good time to be in Seattle. The grunge scene was blossoming. And it was just great to be a young person in Seattle, And we bought our first house. And that's when he found his love of home renovation, because he worked from home. And sales is his natural given talent. And I got a job in HR. And so for 4 years we lived in Seattle. And that's when he really started looking up from everything and saying, there's a really cool pizza scene here. He never, this has been his dream since he was a kid, to have a pizza restaurant. Well, since he was a teenager, I'd say. And so, yes, we talked about it in Houston, but we had no money. We didn't come from F&B. We're like, there's no real way we could actually do it at that point in time.
But he had the business acumen, though.
He had the business acumen. He had the passion.
And he had the experience as well.
And he had, as a waiter, yes. But certainly with pizza, it was just something he always thought, he had this business idea of if you can do pizza and you can do it well, and you can do it consistently over and over and over and over again, you can make money. That was his essential, bottom line thought. And he's right. He was right, it turns out. And it's so when in Seattle, he really, I think, is very inspirational for him, because we witnessed the birth and the blossoming of the independent pizza scene in Seattle. And when I say independent, I mean, we are the epitome of an independent pizzeria. It's people who are passionate about what they do. They open something that's just them. It's their personality on a plate in the restaurant, and doing their own thing and being cool, being funky, being different, and inventing their own style of pizza. And I think that was the time when he thought to himself, he said it too, if there's ever something I will eventually do, it's that style. And coincidentally, it's literally the career path he took, the career path I took, led us to Dubai later in life with enough savings to actually pursue this pizza dream. So after 4 years, he got recruited to be an expat in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. And this is before the internet. I'm dating myself now a little bit, but we didn't have passports as most Americans. We had traveled a lot within the States, Mexico plenty of times, Canada. But at that time, you didn't have to have a passport. You could just show your birth certificate or your social security card, and you could go across the border into either Canada or Mexico. And so we considered ourselves pretty well-traveled people, but we just didn't have passports. So we went and we looked up where Malaysia even was on a map. And we just thought, we're early 30s. Let's go have an adventure. Why not? And so we we decided to do it. And
So you traveled first time there?
First time. So I went sight unseen. He had a visit there with his boss.
Right.
And he actually went during a really bad time. In Kuala Lumpur, they do have every few years a haze which settles on the city. It's basically really toxic, and it's fumes from the burning they do in Indonesia. And
right.
the weather conditions are right. You get this really bad haze. And he went during a period of haze, but he never said that to me. And came back.
Of course not.
It's cool, you know. And I had, like, by that time in HR, researched this whole expat thing. And I was like, you know, expats can actually have it really good. They'll store your furniture. So this was a small company that hired him, and they had never had an expat. So I basically dictated the terms of our contract. I was like, we're going to need this. We're going to need property management for our house here. We're going to need storage for our things here. We're going to need 2 flights home a year. And we're going to need an apartment paid for, a car paid for. And I was like, look, here's the data showing that this is what expats get. And they were like, cool. And they agreed to it.
Nice.
They agreed to it
Nice.
amazingly. And yeah, so we went to, off we went for a 2-year adventure, which didn't end.
So where did you go after KL?
We spent 10 years in Kuala Lumpur. Then we came here.
10 years?
10 years, yeah.
So how's the food there then? You must have loved it.
I had so many awakenings in Kuala Lumpur. I mean, the first 3 years, we went over there knowing that I would probably not be able to get a job because the visa situation is there. It's not like here where just anyone can get a visa. It's more like going to the UK as a foreigner, or to the where you know, company has to really go through a lot of hoops to get you hired. And so I resigned myself to not working for 3 years. It took me 6 months to figure out who I was without a job. I have to say, it was a big adjustment for me. And then I was like, well, I'm just going to embrace this whole Lady of Leisure thing. You know, we lived in this wonderful complex with 2 towers and a pool in the middle. And we made friends with all these different nationalities, Brits, Australians, South Africans. And, you know, at the beginning, I couldn't tell the difference between those accents, you know, and I, of course, soon learned the difference between those accents. I learned how to entertain at home, which just was not a thing. I mean, it's a thing, but like in a way different way than, you know, the way we do it in America is way different than the way I now like to do it, you know? And so I took up tennis. I did all kinds of fun things. And, you know, but then after 3 years, I just went a little stir crazy. And I was like, if I don't get a job, I'm just going to die here. But then we were having so much fun and we loved it. And as luck would have it, I updated my C. As luck would have it, my CV. A friend of mine came to me downstairs at the restaurant down there and said, hey, you used to do HR, right? And I was like, yeah. And she said, a friend of mine, her husband is looking for an HR manager. And so I'll give you her contact. Why don't you send your CV? So I did. The next day, I got a call from her husband saying, can you come in tomorrow for an interview? So I went in and I interviewed and I got the job. And I was an HR man. I'd never been a manager before. I was the only female expat. It was a construction company, Australian construction company.
How many employees then?
We had, all told, we had about 300 employees, and 70 something of them were expats from predominantly from Australia. And so what I was hired to do is mainly manage that population of people, their contracts, their tax situation. It's, you know, they have different their housing situation. They have really different expectations.
But I'm just, tell me if I'm wrong, it must be quite complex though, because you have the Australian legislation and then the legislation in Kuala Lumpur, right?
Yeah, I had to learn employment law in Kuala Lumpur. It doesn't, Australian employment law doesn't apply in Kuala Lumpur.
Right.
But there is the tax situation. And so if, you know, in Australia, if you leave the country, much like the UK, you have to meet certain requirements. But, you know, if you meet those requirements, you can not have to pay tax in your home country. So then we were paying a salary which was grossed up for whatever they did have to pay tax in Malaysia. So there was taxation in Malaysia and everybody had to pay it. So we took their Australian salary and we a kind of somewhere between gross and net. They always wanted it to be gross. And I'm like, guys, come on. You have to pay 35% tax on this, And then I would gross it up for the Malaysia tax. And then we would effectively pay their tax for them in Malaysia and handled that whole process for them. So they didn't really have to do much. And so that was kind of a lot of what I did. So I managed them. I managed their recruitment. I managed their arrival, their settling in, their tax situation, explaining to them, all of that.
How was the thick Australian accents after a while?
Well, by then I was fine with it, but I did learn. I did learn a lot about Australian culture. And it wasn't too long before I learned that when they take the piss, it's a compliment.
Yeah.
And so I learned to give it back. And once I learned to give it back, they were like, whoa, okay, maybe she is one of us after all, And yeah, you just kind of adapt. You adapt. I had a great time. I was with that company for 7 years.
That's amazing. So
yeah.
then,
and I was getting an expat salary too.
So because so what was Bill doing at that time as well?
He by that time had started his own business.
Right.
He had grown the company he got bought by a big, conglomerate, and he never really, that transition wasn't very smooth for him or them, and they wanted to go a different direction. So he started his own lighting agency in Kuala Lumpur.
And were you still, was he still very much interested in the pizzas at that stage?
Yeah, I mean, in the sense that it's something we talked about. It's something that we talked about the fact that Kuala Lumpur could really benefit from good pizza, because there's a massive, vibrant food scene in Malaysia. I mean, every cuisine you could imagine. There's fusion between Indian and Malay. There's fusion between Chinese and Malay, because there's Indian population, there's Chinese population, and then there's Malay. That's the main locals. And there's people who came from India, settled there, people who came from China, settled there, and then have raised families and have started businesses, and food is obviously a big part of.
Phenomenal for you guys.
Yeah, there's a place here called Mamak, which if you go there on a Sunday, you're very likely to see me. You maybe see me and Bill. You'll see Reef and Jasmine. You'll see Akmal and his family. One time we went in and we all were there together, and they served the kind of food that Akmal and Reef are from Singapore, but it's so close that the food is very similar, the hawker style food. And so I really gained an appreciation for that. I gained an appreciation for Hainanese chicken rice, and there was a great food court across the road from where I worked, and I would go and I would get these like wonderful dishes that I had to acquire a taste for. But I'm this type of person that, like, I really don't like to not like something, because I feel like I'm missing out. So I will try something over and over and over again until I finally acquire a taste for it, or I just can't. Durian is one of those things I can't. Mm-hmm. I can't abide by durian. Can't.
But there's that curiosity coming through.
Yeah,
again.
I've tried it. But then you retch a few times and you're just like, okay, I don't necessarily want to try this again, But, over the 10 years we were there, my appreciation for all of these flavors and all of these, and the culture and the people and the recipes and the techniques and the fusion cuisine and all of this stuff really blossomed. Plus, we did a lot of traveling. For the first 3 years I was there, he traveled to Australia, New Zealand, China, and I always went on the trips with him before I started working. So, we did a lot of traveling, and experiencing those cuisines was always like eye-opening, and I was just, whatever, just bring it on,
Amazing adventure, though.
Yeah,
Amazing.
It really, really was.
So then what brought you over to the Middle East?
So my job. So I was part of the executive team. The company that I was with grew, split into, then grew, and my boss had a mandate to just grow even further. And he had a nose for smelling where the opportunities were. And this is like in 2005 when, the building boom here was really kind of I don't know at its peak, but it was definitely thriving. And so he was taking jobs here. So I first came here in 2005, taking contracts,
Right.
to build things. I came here to 2005 to scope it out because I was like, we have to put an office there. He was like, we have to put an office there. You have to hire people to come there. So I would always go ahead and scope things out. I did the same thing in Jakarta. I did the same thing in like various different places that we expanded to. And so this was here, and I came here in 2005, and the marina there was nothing there. It was Hard Rock Cafe, and that was it.
I was going to ask you, because 2005 was a very different picture to what Dubai is today.
100%.
Very different.
And I remember walking into Mall of the Emirates, and first of all, the perfume is the first thing that hit me. And I was like, wow, this mall smells so good, and the ski slope was under construction. It wasn't built at the time. And so, they had a model for the marina there on display in the center court. And I was just like, oh my gosh. And I just couldn't believe it. And I took pictures of it and I showed it to Bill, and I was like, can you believe this? And anyway, I met with, I went around with property people. I toured the different housing that you can get. I understood the pricing. I got to understand the school fees situation. And obviously there's no tax. So that, I was like, thank goodness there's no tax here. And so, yeah, so then we first sort of set up a very small outpost here. And then what started happening is we were all spending more time on a plane to Dubai to do things, me for recruiting trips, them for, business development or checking on the ongoing jobs that we had. And finally, we decided to move the corporate office from Kuala Lumpur to here. And that was when the company was called Leighton, and it did a partial merger with Al Habtoor Engineering. And so that was a big shock for me, coming here to Dubai as an HR person with a very different set of values and ways of working, we'll say. Then I found when I got here, and it was a real shock to me, and I mistakenly thought it was just this company. And so after 6 months, I started to see that I could see differences in my boss. And I was starting to think that, maybe he wasn't doing things in the best interest of the company anymore.
Right.
And when that happened for me, I would have taken a bullet for this guy before, and the light just went out in my eyes. I was just like, I couldn't look at him the same anymore. So I didn't have to look hard, because at that time people were recruiting people like me, right, left and center. So I got recruited to Maras. And that was when Maras had 20 people. And we were in a temporary office, basically a tent out behind engineer's office. And that was a real experience.
And how long were you at Maras for?
6 months. We got here in October 2007.
Right.
And I believe it was May 2008. The hammer fell here.
Right.
And of course, we were a real estate development company. So cuts had to be made, immediate cuts. And I was an easy target because I was a very expensive person. And there was also a group HR person that I'm sure felt that she could handle this 70-person company. And she did, and that's fine. So I got made redundant. And it was a bit of a shock, but it was also a bit of a relief. It was the first time that's ever happened to me. And so you go through this, like, I can't believe this. It's always having been a high performer, and then, that's where I first tasted what might taste like failure. And looking back on it, it was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Now, how did that failure help you?
Well, I just got a perspective. I was able to get a job. So here I am, I'm on the market now. I was able to get a job with TDIC, who developed Saadiyat Island, but it was commuting back and forth to Abu Dhabi. So as a consultant, but making the same I was making, which was great. And so that was a 6-month gig. And that made me understand that I never wanted to commute to Abu Dhabi as a job. At the end of the 6 months, I was kind of fed up with HR in this part of the world. And so I decided I was going to take a break and just spend some time refocusing. And I wanted to pursue an executive coaching course, which I did, not exactly at that time, but I did it. And not long after that, I got a call from one of the executives who had left my old company saying, I'm in the UK now. What are you doing? And I said, well, I'm kind of free. And he goes, well, do you want to like do some freelancing for me? I'm setting up the international arm of this other construction company. I need a management team. Would you help me recruit those people? And I was like, of course. So I worked part-time helping him, mostly from my pajamas behind my laptop. And then when I needed to put on my suit and go to interviews, he would come and I would arrange interviews. Then we would select people. And that kind of got me through a period, because 2008, were you here then?
I was not.
If you were here then, you ask anybody, 2008 was about surviving. Like if you were attempting to stay here in 2008, you're just trying to survive, because it was really, I mean, the market crashed in a huge way, and it impacted everybody. And so, you know, people were losing their jobs right, left, and center, and you're just like, can I survive? So this 6 months I had was like a nice survival mechanism where I was still drawing the same salary. Bill had decided to go and set up his own business. So my salary was what was keeping us going. And then doing that consulting kind of tided me over as well, but it enabled me to have some time and get some perspective to go and work and search for a company, like a multinational company that had best-in-class HR practices, which is, you know, what I really wanted, and I really wanted to do that. So I managed to get a job at a company called Serco, and I worked there for 4 years, and it was a very, very interesting job. And interviewed. I was supposed to be the successor for the HR director. Interviewed for it, just completely blew it in the interview. Don't know what happened, but I blew it. And again, I look at that and I'm so glad I blew it, because I would not have wanted to be an HR director in that company. But then I was like perfect recruitment material for Johnson Controls, who then recruited me, American company, first American multinational I'd ever worked for as an international expat. And so I'd had Australian, I'd had British, and now it was American. So there I was in line. The HR director hired me to be his eventual successor, and I interviewed for that job and got it. And so that was, and I was ready for it at that time. I don't really think I was ready for it back then. I think I unwittingly sabotage myself, because deep down inside my instinct is telling me something, and I sometimes think that it's happened more than once.
It happens a lot though. It's normal. It's normal.
Yeah.
But then 20 years in HR is serious, right? You know, and I think it's one of the toughest jobs generally to manage humans. I mean, when I'm in the kitchens and I'm dealing with like knives, fire, dangerous things, give me any of that over humans any day, because everyone's different and everybody has their own things. But trying to manage a team like an orchestra, so I can't imagine what it's like with 350 people, let alone a multinational company. But then when did you and Bill decide we're going to go and open our place?
It came over a period of many years. So it didn't just happen like that. We, you know, when we got here, we definitely saw a much safer business environment. And we got here with savings and with some life experience behind us. And so we, you know, from the minute we got here in 2007, you know, we surveyed the scene. It was franchises. It was, you know, I mean, it was, you know what it was like back 2007 up until like, I'd say 2012-ish. There was, you know, the only thing you could really get was a huge space, a huge like space, and that was something we didn't want to take a big risk on.
At that time, I do remember sort of 2012 sort of onwards, the scene back then was definitely bigger spaces, nothing small, 250 seats, different covers, franchises. So for you to not take that risk was very wise, I feel. So how did you get your...
Couldn't afford it anyway.
Yeah, how was your first space? How did you get that?
Well, we started cooking pizza. He started cooking pizza at home. So this was, again, I'll bring you back. This is his dream, right? And I was like this high-flying HR executive, but I'm a passionate home cook and foodie. And so, I was like, well, he went to a pizza expo, which is held every year in Las Vegas in the States, a 5-day event. Every supplier to every pizzeria, from equipment to food to everything you could possibly imagine, is there displaying at this thing. It's like Gulf food, but just pizza.
Oh my God, it sounds like a dream. I need to go.
For him, it definitely was. He stayed there 5 days. He took a few classes. He took a basic dough making class. There's a lot of workshops and classes there. And he networked with all the suppliers, and he found out, here's the tomato sauce that people here use. Here's the flour people use. Here's the cheese that people use. So he was convinced that we needed to use those things to do whatever we were going to do in Dubai.
Right.
So he came back from that inspired and said, I'm going to start making pizza at home. I've already spoken to my freight forwarder friends. I've got samples coming from all of these companies, tomato sauce, cheese, and flour. They all came. They were free samples. We had to get an extra freezer to put the cheese in. We had flour stacked up under our stairs in our villa, and I still have that sometimes today. But anyways, and tomato sauce cans stacked up everywhere. And he said, I'm going to need a professional pizza oven
at home.
At home. And I didn't argue with him, because when he gets his mind set on something, I was like, okay. So he picked out a small deck oven, gas-fired deck oven, which is the same oven used by his idol pizzeria, which he fell in love with in Albuquerque. And so we installed that in our garage, and he bought a stand mixer, KitchenAid stand mixer, and just started mixing dough. And I came home one day, he's like, so do you want to make you pizza tonight? And I was like, sure, I'll eat some pizza. So he just started experimenting, and then we would put whatever we wanted on it, and we tried all the different sauces, and we tried all the different cheeses, and he kept going back to the drawing board and tweaking things and tweaking things.
He was like a mad professor.
And he still is a mad scientist when he gets into, when he thinks about dough. It's like it's an art and a science. There's so much to it that, people just don't really understand what goes behind it. And that is what he is singularly passionate about. And so it went from really kind of average at best pizzas to better and better and better, to having pizza parties at our house. And then the more people that came to them, it was just like the core group of people who would always come. And a couple of them are still left in Dubai, and they've just, they go into Dubai Hills, and they're just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you guys started from where you did, So we did these pizza parties, and then I started helping him because, I would do up a menu, and then I would help him prep the toppings, because it's a lot of work actually prepping toppings if you're going to make 6, 7, 8 pizzas even, And then we had these great, phenomenal parties, and he just kept scouting for the right place. One day, through his lighting career, he came home, he said, I found the spot. And I said, where? And he said, it's in the Greens. It's in a retail center. There's a supermarket there, a lot of footfall, small little space, low risk. There's an Italian restaurant in there, and it looks like it's dead. So I'm sure we could go to them, and we could say, hey, can we do our pizza thing in there? And I was like, okay, well, it's a little more complicated than that, but okay. And he found out, I was like, okay, let's pursue it, And so he actually went to that location to help a friend of his with his barbershop, help with the lighting. And that's how he saw this little place. Turns out the barbershop guy was a partner in the Italian place. And it was just this passion project of his Italian partner. And they really didn't focus on it. And so didn't really care about it. And Bill was like, well, would you like us to make you some pizza? And they're like, sure. So at that point in time, I was like, I have to come help you. Like, you can't cook you need help. Okay. So I went and helped, and I made a little menu for them, and they all came and they sat, and we, in their ovens, electric ovens at the time, which were not great. We made 6 different pizzas for them, and they just chomped it and loved it. And at the end, they were like, we need to do this. What do we need? How do we? And by that time, because Bill is a designer at heart, and he had already conceptualized the brand. We had talked about the name. We had settled on a name. He had the logo designed, and he even had the interiors more or less mapped out in his head of what he wanted to do. So we had something to show them. He had something to show them, to say, this is what we think we can do with this shop. And they were like, great. So we kind of, in our wisdom at the time, you can probably sense a failure coming here. In our wisdom, we decided to set it up like a franchise, because we didn't want to be partners with anyone. We just wanted to get it up and running and redo the space and like launch the brand. And so we thought, we'll do this. We'll act like they're the franchisor, we're the franchisee, but we're operating it. We don't really have any skin in the game in terms of a proven concept. So we agreed to pay the cost of the renovation, of the rebranding. And along the way, Bill decided we couldn't use that electric oven. We needed a gas oven. So that was again, they didn't agree. So we had to buy the oven and foot that bill. It was expensive. And long story short, we got it open in April 2014. And it was very well received. So we were like, I brought my goddaughter over from the States. She lived with us. Bill taught her everything. She went to culinary school. She had worked as a cook and a chef, and she was just sort of at a loose end, 23 years old. Why not come for an adventure in Dubai? So we brought her over, and she was the restaurant manager. And that at home, she helped us do what we had, take what we had been doing at home and put it on a commercial scale. And then she was in charge of like the dessert development, except for the apple pie. Bill was like, you got to put your apple pie on the menu. Which is delicious. I protested, but I ended up doing it. And so, but the other desserts we had, she developed. So I would come home from work, and she'd have like 4 different salads that we would agree on a direction. She would have like 4 different salads for us to try. She would have, 3 different versions of a particular dessert. We started with a caramel slice and like a sort of what are they called now? It's like a lava cake kind of a thing. We had that. We had a caramel slice, and we had my pie. And so she helped immensely with those. And then we had to develop an actual, we had to have a menu. It wasn't just the 8 or 10 pieces we did at home. Then we had to figure out what else we were going to have on the menu. So we had a decent list of pizzas. So we just kind of fell back on favorites for the most part, with the exception of the Palm, which originated from wanting to do a pizza with fresh figs. And obviously Parma ham or prosciutto would be what you would do it with outside here. So we thought, we'll just use Bresaola. And so at that time in 2013, when we were coming up with the pizzas, fresh figs were not as year-round available as they are now. So I was like, nope, we can't do anything seasonal because we need consistency. And I was like, well, why don't we try dried figs? And so then when I was buying the dried figs, I saw the dates, and I thought, while we're trying. So I just gave them to Susie, and I said, all right, try these out and bring us home samples. And she did. And they were both delicious. Like dried figs, they soften up in the oven, and you kind of have to eat them quick because then they harden up again, but they're really nice. But the dates, they stay soft. And I thought, here we are in the Middle East. If we got 3 date palms in our garden at home, like this has to be what we use instead of the figs. Plus, they work better overall. So that's the only sort of like out of the box pizza we did.
But then, how did you come up with the name? Because I love the fact that it says Pitfire Bakers on the actual box and the logo. But where did that originate from?
So putting bakers in the name of our restaurant came from Bill finally putting his foot down and saying, we are bakers. His grandfather was a baker, came from Germany, was a baker. Bill, in his youth, used to spend time in the bakery. So he,
Love that.
that's where it came from for him, I promise you. And food, a dish that changed his life is his first slice of pizza. And so, love of baking somehow in his DNA, love of pizza, it came together. And, he was like, we are bakers. We are baking pizza. We bake for 7 minutes. It's not your flash 60, 90-second Neapolitan. Our bake time, our bake temperature, the deck temperature, all of that is extremely important. The fermentation process we use in our dough it's got a lot of steps to it. And there's a lot behind it. So Bill was like, we're going to change it to, we used to have Pitfire, and then Pizza Cafe underneath. And he said, we're going to change it to Pizza Bakers.
Brilliant.
And I didn't have any objections to it, apart from, just, okay, I got to change the logo. Okay.
But then how would you develop the differences in taste between, because you have the palate of the US pizza, and then you have the palate of the Middle East. So how were you and Bill able to sort of differentiate between the two?
We didn't really try to. We just, the stuff we put on the menu is stuff we like, and it tends to be fairly classic stuff. Our best seller is the pepperoni primo. The next one is the margarita. It alternates between margarita and the truff daddy. And I only put the truff daddy on. I only did the truff daddy like 3 years ago because I'm not a big fan of truffle. And so it just took me that long to go, I think we really need a truffle pizza. So that's probably our first compromise towards local flavors, towards local palate, was putting truffle on a pizza. Other than that, we're just like, here's what it is. And people love it. It's
absolutely.
We didn't have to.
Well, the other thing I wanted to ask you is obviously 10 years down the road now.
Yeah.
How many pizza bakeries do you have?
We have 7 locations.
Incredible.
Yeah, that includes Time Out Market. That includes 2 delivery-only kitchens and 4 other dine-in locations. So, we started in JLT Cluster D. So the greens ended in failure. The brand, huge success. We fell out with the people that, and we, looking back, we really set it up so naively because we had no control over the visas. We had no control over the payroll. We had no control really over anything. And my goddaughter decided she had enough of the Middle East, Mr. Family, and wanted to go back. So we hired a new store manager. And so he was our only tie to the business. And by then, they had seen how successful it was. And the Italian partner really started wanting to interject his own ideas and his own, he would not rest until we put pasta on the menu. And we're like, all right, we will put American style pasta on the menu, but we're not going to do aglio, however you say that. I like it, but I don't know how to pronounce it. And so, yeah, so we compromised on that, but there was just growing friction between us because, he somehow got it in his mind that we worked for him. And, we were like, this is our brand. And the smartest thing we ever did was register the mark.
Right.
Because, they ended up pushing us out. And they wouldn't communicate with us. We never got paid back a cent we never got paid anything from them. And we got no communication, and they just carried on operating as if it was theirs. So I can't even tell you how that made us feel. It was like someone had kidnapped our 4-year-old child, and we could see it, but we couldn't nurture it. You know what I mean? And they were just still operating. And so we had to go legal through the DED, and it took a long time, took about a year, but we finally prevailed in the end and forced them to rebrand and change things. And they're not in business anymore, unsurprisingly. They never had a passion for it. And we reopened in JLT. And when we reopened in Cluster D and JLT, we had new partners, but again, small location because we didn't want to take a big risk with so much of our money again. And so we had partners, and but they were really cool and they knew what we had gone through, and they were like, we'll sign any sort of agreement you want. So we set it up contractually correctly, and we started, and then they rebranded it first to Pitfire. So it was like there was a Pitfire and there was a Pitfire, and actually a lot of the people they used to order from Pitfire never really noticed the difference because it was just their place they would order for delivery. And so we had to sort of come back and go, we are back and we are Pitfire, you know? So we did Right Market. And I was at every single Right Market. I would go to the store in my car, pick up the slices, load up the slices, take them to the market, unload them, put them in the chiller, and be there taking orders, talking to people for the whole season of the Right Market. And that helped a lot. It really helped get our story out there and get some awareness that business in the greens may look like us, but it is not us. And so we just kind of grew from there. We relaunched with 2 new pizzas on the menu that they didn't have because we wanted to differentiate ourselves. That's when we brought on the Spudnik and the Hipster. And we kind of went back to the drawing board with those. You know, it was back to, okay, now we got to like figure out some new pizzas. And it's just research, seeing something that looks kind of cool and then thinking, okay, let's try it. And then do we like it? Because you can see pizzas on anybody's menu, but there's no recipe for them. It can say what's on them, but you don't know what form that ingredient takes. So it's just about taking those particular ingredients and maybe adding something or taking them and doing them your way, which is the way that I think that's the way the industry works pretty much.
True, Michele, but I'm going to go into Chef James now.
Okay.
If I look at the number of pizzas that are in the market, and pizza places, there are thousands, as you know. The things that us chefs love more than anything is incredible produce. So when I think about your pizzas and what you do, even down to your crust, everything that you guys are doing when it comes to taste and flavor, I think is amazing and incredible. And that's not just me saying that everyone is saying that, right? So the way you guys are doing things, I think, is great. I love the names, which are original, because you can just put Margarita, blah, blah, blah. But no, you're doing like super cool names like Truff Daddy, so on and so forth. But the one thing I have to talk about, which should be illegal, are your garlic knots, because they are so amazing. And the thing is that for anyone who hasn't had them, can you describe what they are like, please?
To eat?
Yes, to eat.
Oh gosh. They are pillowy cushions of chewy, buttery, garlicky goodness.
With the truffle sauce.
And then with the dipping sauce. So,
Yeah.
you know, we started out with our Gorgonzola Ranch only, and then we developed a range of dipping sauces, and the black truffle cream is one of the biggies. Yeah. And, you know, so they are like, most people do want them with a sauce. And so I don't know about you. I mean, they look like a bow tie.
Yeah.
So garlic knots is something which is very common in the States. I've never seen anyone do it the shape that we do before, which is basically just taking a strip of dough and tying it in a knot. That is all it is. It's the simplest thing we do.
But it's the flavors that you're getting into it, though, as well.
It's our pizza dough.
You know?
All it is
And
is
the
our
butter and the parmesan.
Okay, I will say, listen, we are very particular about, there are certain things that we are really particular about, even if it means spending more.
Yes.
One is baby rocket. I refuse to use the locally grown rocket because I feel like it just tastes, the quality is all over the place. So yes, we pay more for baby rocket. Baby gem lettuce in the Caesar salad. I'm not going to have that. Sorry, big romaine. Don't want it. Maybe traditional, but I want baby gem. So we spend more on baby gem. Our pepperoni is 3 times more expensive than anything you can get locally in the market. And our garlic butter. We use Lurpak garlic butter. And we pay more for it. And I'm sure we could make it cheaper in-house if we wanted to. But there is no substitute for consistency. And I'm not doing anything to jeopardize those garlic knots.
That's what I'm saying, is that the fact that you really look, as well as Bill's amazing scientific mind when it comes to the dough. I love the fact that you guys are really into the details of the ingredients and what you're doing. And the other thing that I also want to mention is that you've just opened a really beautiful new place in Dubai Hills. And those details are there when it comes to the pizza and when you come and dine. Now, your designers must have had quite a tricky time if Bill was also a designer. So how was that synergy?
It wasn't without friction, I'll say that. It was...
But it's good, though, because you from that friction, something amazing is born.
Yes. But like, Govind, right? We used 2106, and he came to us recommended. And, for any project in an EMAR establishment, you do have to use an interior designer. I mean, they need you to use one, and I was like, you have to, Bill. He's done all the design for all the other ones. And he was like, I was like, this is one where you really have to. And so Govind is a super cool guy, and he's got a great team. And so Bill just has really, really, really strong ideas. So he was working on a layout for the restaurant before we ever signed a lease, because we got the LODs very early, and we gave our deposit early, and it took them a long time to get us the lease. So he was working on that before we got a lease, before someone like Govind ever had a chance to get a look in. So Bill had almost really already had an idea for what the layout was going to be. And so Govind's team proposed a few layouts as well. And Bill was like, well, here's what I think. And Govind looked at it and he said, that's better than anything we've come up with. So yeah, we'll go with that. And so it was Govind. He's really good at just working with the people he works with, because, for any consultant working with an owner, particularly when the owner is also a designer, is not easy. And Bill is not easy. Consultants don't really like working with him. Govind may have said that to you. And
he never said that to me, for the record.
No, he's too professional to do that. He really is a super nice guy. Shout out to 2106. Super nice guy. But, it was really a matter of they would send through stuff, Bill would mark it up, and they would make the changes. And then, it was just an iterative process like that. So Bill was just involved every step of the way. The material selection, when it came down to it, Bill ended up changing all of the material selections that were originally there. Not to such an extent that the essence of it did not remain. But because they designed around our floor plan, it was, relatively straightforward. And they did a great job getting the submissions done through the EMAR portal and all of that stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm very happy for them to put Pitfire on their list of projects. They didn't work with us in the same way that they were. I listened to his episode and I liked it. And I love his ethos. I really do. And he does care. He cares as much as he said he cares. And he, but with us, we are not a chef-led concept. We are a recipe and owner-led concept. So because consistency is the name of the game, especially when you're doing high volume delivery, recipes are like, you don't deviate from the recipe. And so we don't hire, people like you to come in and sort of run the culinary operation behind Pitfire, because we don't want that. We don't want anybody coming in with creative ideas. Yeah. We have the creative ideas. Yes, and so, it's, and it's worked for us so far because we have stayed very, very much involved. And when I left behind my HR career to sort of reinvent myself as a restaurateur, then that's when, the real sort of hands-on stuff really started, because up until then it was just part-time
That's
stuff.
what I wanted to ask you, Michele, is that from all your time in the industry within food and beverage, what would you say have been your biggest challenges within those 10 years?
Oh gosh, there have been so many. Look, I would say I'm a person, when I put my mind to something, and we have this saying of like, Team Johnson. Like the two of us are a great team, and we have complementary skill sets. We're a great team. And so between the two of us, we're going to just roll right over any sort of obstacles that come in our way and find a way around them. But for me, it was much like when I first got to Kuala Lumpur, I had to figure out who I was without a job. I had to figure out who I was as a restaurateur. I had no network. You know, I didn't know how to read P&L. We had hired a good store team, a good store management team. We designed Pitfire to operate without us in it. I mean, this was always our plan. We never wanted to spend all day standing in a restaurant. And so the store was running and it was fine. And, you know, but in terms of, you know, managing growth and all that sort of stuff, that's where I started finding my feet. I quickly developed a network because F&B here, you know, people are so nice, honestly. They're super helpful. You know, we had already a lot of diehard fans of the brand who just, do you need help? If you ever need anything, let me know. So the guy who is now our operations director taught me how to read a P&L back then over coffee one day. He showed me his P&L and he was like, look, see how this goes. And, you know, he helped me structure our P&L into a proper format. And so it was just, so challenges were just trying to figure out how to do something I'd never done before. And that happened a lot, you know, and opening a new restaurant with, you know, having to make those decisions, having to, you know, find a good space, having to negotiate the lease, having to manage the fit out. Bill does the fit out stuff, I have to say. He manages all of that. I don't get too involved in that. But as someone who manages the business, and I think chefs learn this somewhere along the way, you have to learn about MEP. You have to learn about HVAC. You have to learn about things like makeup air and exhaust and ducting and, you know, these things. And in JLT was a great place to learn because JLT was not built for F&B. It was built for retail. So, you know, if you go to JLT, it's a great place to start for any brand wanting to start something and try something. But it's got its limitations, and every single place has had their own challenges to overcome with getting heat. So heat in the kitchen is probably the biggest challenge I would say that me and Bill collectively have faced over the years. Heat and getting the exhaust out.
Do you know what's really interesting is that most of the guests on here would say it's the man management. But for you, I think it would have been easier, no? Because you had that experience.
I did. And that really helped. There were a lot of times when my HR experience came in handy. You know, I know how to build a team. I understand what it takes to manage people. And so my job as an HR director would be to let's say I'm an HR director for a hospitality group, to make sure that the Jameses of this world, James Knight-Pachecos of this world, who are there to manage those staff, knows how to be a manager, because no one teaches you how to be a manager. This is the thing. And so, you know, any training course I ever championed, any sort of anything like that I ever, you know, any counseling I ever did or discussions I ever did or coaching I ever did, all lead back to that thing of like, nobody gave you a book and told you how to do this. You know, so you're just going to have to figure it out as you go along. And I'm here to give you some guidelines to work within, and I will coach you through certain things, but you will hire your own people, and you will performance manage your own people, and you will terminate your own people if you need to. You're going to need to tell me why you want to do it, and I need to make sure it's justified and that you're not going to get slapped with a labor law case.
Yes, yeah.
But like, you know, and so that part was super easy for me. And the other thing I learned as we've grown is, and I knew this when I was recruiting, it's like a guy who could manage a $10 million job is not the same guy who can manage a $50 million job. Totally different animals. And for the 10 million guy to step up to the 50, that's a huge step up. So he needs to be brought up. And so what gets you to one level is not going to be what takes you to the other. And when we had JLT, we opened cluster J. which was our delivery only kitchen because we wanted to keep Cluster D. We just outgrew it so quick. We were doing delivery and dine-in. That was where Food Shake came and did his review. He sat at our one little table and he gave us a 9.
Yeah, and then it exploded.
Oh
as
my
well.
gosh. I lived.
Shout out
I
to Food
remember,
Shake.
I know Food Shake. Hey, I'm his biggest fan and he knows it. But yeah, I mean, when he started following us, I almost had a meltdown because I was like, that means he knows who we are. That means he might come in one day. And what if it's a bad day? I just worried and worried and worried. And it turns out I didn't have to. He really saw us. He really did. And he knew what happened in the greens. And he starts his review by saying, this is a brand with some baggage, And so
he started lightly.
Yeah. No, he knew, like, he saw us when he came there. He saw what we were doing. He saw, because that was us. Like, you could see that operation and you could be like, I can see what these people are doing, And so, yeah, then we had to find a place to grow into. We wanted to keep Cluster D because it's where we started. Plus, it's a phenomenal location in JLT. You got the metro, you got the offices. So we decided, what if we do a delivery-only kitchen with just a few seats? But then we looked in a cluster where the rents were lower, where the footfall was less, but the access in and out was really good. So delivery was, at that point in time, and really still is, the name of our game. It's a huge part it's a disproportionate part of what we do. We do try to dine in only is our first. Dubai Hills is the first ever location we don't do delivery out of.
But I just think what a phenomenal story, Michele, because the other thing that I cannot ignore from the 10 years that you've been operating is the fact that we have Michelin, we have 50 best, we have Go and Merlot, we have 100 best chefs, and now there's 100 best pizza. And you are featured in that because it's testament to what the entire team is doing, of course, and the fact that you take so much pride in what you do. I think that's amazing. How did you get the news for that?
Email. By the way, there's 2 different organizations. One is Top 100. The other one is 50 Top. 50 Top is the one that contacted us. They are, I would say I need to look at my research, but I think they started around the same time.
Right.
They have slightly different focuses, but both organizations focus just on pizzerias because these people are very passionate. They believe that, pizza is it's the world. Everyone loves pizza. And why is no awarding body recognizing this? So they have regional 50 best. They have, like segmental 50 best. So we were artisan pizzerias, artisan pizzeria chains, because they also recognize that what it takes to be great in one location is all well and good, but what it takes to be great consistently across 4, 5, 6 locations, it's a whole other can of worms.
But I love the fact that they call you artisan because that's exactly what it is. No?
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
Because I think it's amazing.
We've never actually used that word much, but yeah, we are. We're a craft. Bill likes the word craft better. We're a craft pizzeria.
Absolutely. But look, you must have, I do because I'm a geek and I binge watch anything to do with food. Mm-hmm. But the Netflix series on pizza, I think, is just such an amazing highlight on what can be achieved with pizza because it's a blank canvas, right?
Yeah.
So, and also, I said it previously, but my heart, I started in a pizzeria.
Really?
Yeah. So that's where I get my love of like speed and heat and dough and all of that kind of stuff.
I didn't know that.
So that's why.
Yeah.
I just think it's amazing. But the great thing is that now people all over the world have really started to sort of see what you guys are doing and they're flocking to come and see you taste the pizza. I mean, it's part of the UAE landscape, I feel.
Well, we like to think so. We like to think that we were one of the early pioneers of, independent pizzerias focusing just on pizza. And we were certainly the early pioneer of the style of pizza that we do. A pizza which bakes for 7 minutes because Neapolitan was the predominant, style. It still is, actually. I mean, that's what everyone knows. They're familiar with it. It's something that, that sort of, Napoli style pizza is something that is well loved all over the world and it's recognized all over the world. That's not what we do. We do something completely different. We bake for 7 minutes. We want a crunchy crust.
I love the crust.
And we
The
knew,
char is amazing.
yeah, I mean, the thing is, it
Never
delivers
take it
really
away.
well.
Never take
We
it
won't.
away.
Don't worry, we
please.
won't. It delivers really well. And that was what we knew that delivery was, because we weren't licensed. So we knew that delivery was going to be a big part of what we did. So we had to have something that stands up in a box. A steaming box for 20 minutes does no favors to any product. So, you know,
And it's still, when it comes home, it's still beautiful.
yeah.
I had one the other day. I mean, I think I order one almost every week. No joke.
You've been doing your research to try to, what's your favorite?
Do you know, I'm a simple guy though. I love the margarita.
Yeah.
You know, I love
Yeah.
that one. So, Michelle, we've now come to the quick fire questions. Are you ready?
That was fast. Okay.
So, first things first. Margarita or pepperoni?
Pepperoni.
What's your favorite Pitfire pizza?
That's like asking me what my favorite child is.
Come on, we've all got one.
Can I say that it changes?
Yes, absolutely.
It changes. It rotates between the pepperoni, but I add chopped fresh green chili because I like heat.
Oh,
So that's my little modification
insider
that
tip
I
there.
make. Yes. So the pepperoni, I do like our margarita, and I won't order it at home, but I will sit down and have a slice and enjoy it because it's just all those nice flavors. I really like the Brasola and Rocket. I love the Palm. Palm's probably that's the one I will always insist that people try if they've never
Okay.
tried it before, because it's not something that people would typically order when they see it on the menu, but then when they try it, they're converted and they're like, okay, this is amazing. So the Palm I love the Palm. I love the Hawaii 5-0, which is a spicy chicken pizza with barbecue sauce on the base. It's so American. And pineapple. I love that one. Yeah, I mean, I love the 5-star. I love the Stubby Special. They're all good.
they're all there. They're all there. Now, I'm going to get in trouble for saying this. Shawarma or tacos?
Oh gosh. Tacos.
Naples or Texas?
Texas.
At the moment, right now, what are your top 3 favorite cuisines in the world to eat?
I really didn't give this one. I didn't give that much thought. That is so hard. I would say Mexican. So Mexican is so much variety to it. I definitely think Mexican
Very
is
complex.
one of them. Can I just lump Asia together,
Yes.
but take out Japanese?
Okay.
Okay, because I do like Japanese food, but I would not say it's one of my top 3 cuisines.
Mhm.
But I love any Asian food that there is. I love it. And then Levantine cuisine, Middle Eastern food. I have really developed such an appreciation for all of the home cooking stuff from the Levant, which really for me speaks to my childhood and to to the traditions that we had at home, and going out in the garden and knowing where your food comes from, and knowing where the meat comes from, and living on a farm and working and having chores and having the fresh stuff, watching my mom preserve it, having it then in the winter and being good. Like, these are all things that are treasured in the Levant as well. And so those traditions, those kind of like, we do this the same every time. I really value that. And I've really grown to acquire a taste for so many things. And I like to cook myself. I love to do cooking classes. So I have my favorites, but that brand of food is something I crave when I go home, because I don't get it there. First thing we get when we come home, we order a mixed grill.
So who would you say are your top 3 culinary heroes? And they don't necessarily need to be chefs.
Okay, So these will be a bit obscure for you, but they have informed me. First is my mom.
Always.
Got to be my mom, because my mom doesn't particularly like cooking, doesn't particularly like to cook, but she always made sure that we had a nutritious, delicious meal. And she never got tired of me hanging around in the kitchen and watching what she did and letting me stir things and stuff like that. So definitely my mom. There's another lady who was a friend of my parents back in those days when we lived on the farm. The most phenomenal home cook. Her name is Mavis Outlaw. And when we would go over to Mavis's house, Mavis made this, she had this special recipe for dill pickles, and I was obsessed with them. And anything that woman cooked was fantastic. And she really used to teach me things in the kitchen. And she gave me, for my wedding shower, she gave me a little book called My Favorite Recipes. And it's a spiral bound book. I still have it. It's taped together.
Oh.
And she wrote her dill pickle recipe in there.
Wow.
And that was, she gave me that as the present. And so she was always patient with me, and her food just really inspired me. And she gave me that little book, and that book, I used that book and I still use it, So the third, okay, this is going to be really obscure. Jacques Pepin. And you know why? Because he did cooking shows starting in the 80s, in the early 80s. He did this thing called Cooking at Home. And Jacques Pepin is a natural born teacher. And he would do things like, here's how you dice an onion. And he would first you cut here, then you cut here, then you cut here, here, here. And then see, you just go move it. So instructional. And I would just be glued to watching him. And so I learned some really basic techniques from him. And I watched every single show I could get my hands on that I could possibly devour. I watched him. And then when other cooking shows started, I watched those. So I do love a cooking show. And I have one more, if I can,
please,
if I may. Again, really obscure, Delia Smith.
Delia. The queen.
The goddess Delia. I worship at the altar of the goddess Delia. Now, let me tell you why. I've never met her. I've never really watched her too much on TV. I know she does some stuff. What I love is her cookbooks, because I learned a very, very, very valuable lesson the first time I ever cooked something out of a Delia Smith cookbook. I learned the value of a well-written recipe. Because, if you open magazines and you see these recipes and you try to follow them and you think, and it doesn't come out well and you think, I suck at cooking. No, that's just a bad recipe. She writes recipes in a way that are foolproof. If you just do what she says in the order that she says, then it'll come out great. And every single one of her recipes is like that. So it taught me something very basic about, recipes and reading recipes and recognizing a good recipe when I see it, and I always tell home cooks that think they can't cook. I'm probably like, because you just tried a badly written recipe, because there's a lot of them out there.
Yeah. So true.
So she writes great cookbooks.
So true. So then, from all of your years in hospitality,
yeah,
or out of hospitality, what's been your funniest ever kitchen or restaurant incident that you've seen or been involved in?
If we hadn't done a tasting for the Miss Lily's collaboration that we've got going on right now, where Richie brought in, so Richie's the Miss Lily chef. He brought in some green Scotch bonnets for the first time. Because we had red and yellow, and then there's the green. First of all, Scotch bonnets are a whole different chili. They have a different heat. They hit different. They taste different. The heat is delayed, so you get to taste the chili. And so he brought in these green ones, and he was going on and on and on about the difference between them and how the green is much better for this and that. Because we're doing a brownie where he crystallizes the Scotch bonnet. He was like, the green is going to be great for this because you can really taste the green and everything. So we had these chilies sitting there on the cutting board, and I said, you know what? I'll make a game out of anything. I said, let's do that. I'm going to see if I can do, I love blind taste tests. Love them. Love them. And so I said, I'm going to see if I can tell the difference on a blind taste test between these two chilies. So Richie, you know, let's chop. I chopped up 4 pieces, uniform size, 2 of each. And I was like, okay, now I'm going to close my eyes, open my mouth, and you're going to like give me one at a time. And then I will try to tell which one is which. So we did this. And I nailed it. I got it right. I was like, second one was the green. And he was like, correct. And I was like, well, now let's see if you can do it. And he goes, all right, I'm game. Okay. You know? And so all full of confidence. And I didn't expect it to turn out the way it did. But anyway, you probably see what's coming. So he closes his eyes, he opens his mouth, and I took one of them. I put the green in first, and he chewed, and he was like, okay, next. And I put the red, and then he goes, last one was the green. And I said, no, and I was like, oh my God. And I just like fell apart in the kitchen. And he was like, I said, I can't believe you didn't get that right. And so I was like, so my taste buds are officially better than your taste buds. And he was like, all right, you won fair and square. Don't know how that happened.
Richie, mate.
He'll admit it. He'll admit it.
Fair enough.
I don't know how it happened, but that was hysterical.
What a legend.
I got it on film, by the way.
What advice would you give to any budding pizza chefs?
Pizza chefs, I would say there's a difference between a pizza chef and owning your own pizza restaurant. So as a pizza chef, that's what you asked. So an advice to a pizza chef, I would say just follow your heart. Do what your boss tells you to do, but follow your heart within the limits that you have to work within. If you're not particularly passionate about the type of pizza that you're being asked to cook at work, don't be afraid to learn and experiment with other styles of pizza that you might like. However you decide to pursue that passion that you have, whatever it may be, and just enjoy it. You know, you're cooking a food which makes people happy. And, you know, we tell our guys all the time, you know, you are making people so happy doing what you do every day. And that's such a nice experience. And even if you're hidden back behind doors and nobody can see what you're doing, you know, you can take comfort in the fact that what you were doing with your hands, with that oven, with your mind and your eyes is making people really happy.
So then what advice would you give to somebody who would want to open a pizza business?
You know, I would say, first of all, don't be afraid. There are a few things. A lot of people think that I got a good product, therefore I should open a restaurant. There's so much more to that. Having a good product is a given. You have to have a good product. That's like step number 1 of 100. But I would say, you know, understand the business you're operating in, understand the environment in which you want to do this in. If it's where you are now, research it thoroughly, explore it, see what's out there, see what people are doing right, see what people are doing wrong. You know, really, really don't just like open a restaurant without ever opening your eyes to the reality of what you see around you, because you have to differentiate yourself in some way. So if you don't know what else is being done in the market, how can you possibly do that, you know? And be well funded. If you're going to have a partner or an investor, be sure you understand what their role is, what your role is, because that's crucial. And, you know, don't be afraid to take risks and just go for it. I mean, that's what we did. Don't be afraid to fail, because that's when you learn. Failure is transformative.
Absolutely.
You know, and the longer you do it, the more you do it and realize your life hasn't come to an end, the more you start to embrace it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
then what advice would you give to 16-year-old Michele Johnson?
Calm down. I would learn another language. You know, that's something I really, really wish I had done was, I mean, I did take Spanish, but, you know, and I did speak German when I was a little kid, but my mom never spoke it at home, so I didn't keep it. But I do think that knowing a language and being able to speak another language and then learn from there is a brain muscle thing. And so as an adult, it's very difficult to learn another language. So I would definitely say learn another language, and keep following your dreams and trust your gut, because it's often right.
If people wanted to get hold of you through social media, how can they do that?
Well, I have my own Instagram account is Find Michele. And so I'm there. I am very hands-on with the Pitfire Instagram. I've only just recently in the last year taken my hands off responding to the DMs. And so I still do go in and check DMs. And there are still some DMs that come through that the social media agency don't know how to answer. And so they're fewer and fewer, because I have some automated responses, but some, let me just take this. And then I go on and I introduce myself as myself. But for the longest time, people were just shocked to see it was me on the other end of the line. Oh my God, you're answering the DM, you're the owner. And, because that's how I stayed in touch with the community. So
that's amazing.
So yeah, I always through Pitfire you can get me.
So anyone who wants to get hold of you, what's the Pitfire Instagram?
It's Pitfire Pizza Bakers.
Easy peasy.
Easy peasy.
And are you on LinkedIn?
I am, but I don't really go on LinkedIn much, but I am on there.
So more Instagram, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll put all of that in the show notes.
More Instagram, yeah.
So then, Michele, I just wanted to sort of go through what we've just discussed and had a slight recap, because I think it's been amazing. From your food memories of the cucumbers, which I think is really cool, cucumber salad. Well, I need to get the recipe, I think. Then from the types of food growing up to then your education, then of course meeting Bill, which was transformational to both of your lives. Luckily, he didn't go and fly Apache helicopters. He might do later on, I'm not sure. But, it's amazing that you guys then went from the US, Seattle, cementing that sort of dream of pizza from Bill, to then moving all that way to KL, spending 10 years there together, coming to the UAE, seeing and learning so many things. What an amazing journey, to then finally opening an award-winning pizzeria, which is just everywhere at the moment, and people really love the brand. The staff love the brand to the point that they've got tattoos of the brand on there, which is amazing. And it's a testament to both yourself and Bill that really is just amazing. So on behalf of the Chef JKP podcast, thank you very much for taking the time to be here, inspiring us. Keep pushing the brand, keep going, because I know Pitfire is really going to go places. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. I've had fun.
Done.
Gosh, that